So first of all, we'd like to thank all of the brothers and sisters who came forth and put effort, donated their money, donated their time to come to the masjid, to help build the masjid and the Hussainiyat and the schools for us. Please give a loud salawat for them. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And then to all of the young men and young women who got us started on the right foot by reading some Quran. Please give a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal jihad izzan lil Islam. So we're continuing in this hadith, from the khutbah of Fadak from Fatima, and the next thing which she's mentioning is jihad. And she says that this is izzan, which is like to make for the glory and the greatness of Islam. And Allah says in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَالْقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. And resist and fight those who fight against you, but do not initiate. Surely Allah does not like those who start the fighting. So this is an important part of our religion, which is the physical jihad. Because of course we have jihad al-Akbar, which a person is struggling against his own nafs. And this goes on from day one until the last moment of your life, that you're struggling, trying to keep yourself, make yourself better, work on yourself, improve yourself, become a better human being. This never stops. This is why it's jihad al-Akbar. No matter how much you do, there's still more jihad to do. But there is also an aspect of the religion which is the struggle, which is in the physical world. And there are those who want to say that this is something that is wrong with Islam. They have this, I remember they had this atheist who, actually Zionist, but he tried to pretend to be neutral. And he would be like, well, Islam has this unfortunate part of the religion, which is that they have jihad. They have fighting. And this is violence, and violence is bad. The same person was caught going through an airport with a gun. The same person, they have their own private security. The same people that they glorify violence when it's them and talk about how good it is and talk about dropping nuclear bombs on people and talk about killing people and talk about this. When you say that I have the right to self-defense, they say, no, that's violence. One of the things that they have is they say that, no, for the believers or for the mazloom, his only right is to be mazloom and to take his case to the same zalim that didn't care about right and wrong to take his right, and then have him ask the zalim, please stop taking my right. That's your only right as a mazloom. If you're a true mazloom, the pure mazloom, the honest mazloom, that's how you do it. Someone comes and robs you, you go peacefully and you say, please sir, can you give it back? He slaps you and you say, you just sit there and get slapped and slapped and slapped until he gets tired. And then he says, inshallah, he decides that, you know what, now that I've driven your car for about 6 months, a year, okay, I'll let you have it back. And supposedly this is the way to get justice for the true followers of righteousness. Any person with any sense knows this is ridiculous. No person believes this. Even an animal doesn't believe this. This was the whole argument when they had against Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali. Even though in reality, Martin Luther King was not as pacifist as they showed him to be. But they tried to frame it this way. They see, mashallah, he came out, he marched peacefully, got beat up, and then the people realized that this was the wrong way. And then Malcolm X was saying that, no, this is ridiculous. He said, we have the right, we reserve the right to defend ourselves. You don't have to necessarily do it right now, but you have that right. That's a tool in the toolbox. What's very interesting is that when you do research on this, both of these two ideas came from Islam. So the whole concept of nonviolence, nonviolent resistance, is actually Martin Luther King was borrowing from Gandhi. And Gandhi himself was borrowing his idea from the struggle of Imam Hussain. That you refuse and you do tabarra of the zalim, and you refuse to accept the zalim even if you don't have the proper weaponry and the proper numbers, and then you let the zalim go ahead and show his zulm to everyone. And this puts pressure on the zalim. It puts pressure in two ways. One is it makes the people who are looking at the situation can see who is right and who is wrong. This is one way. If you initiate the violence very early, it's not very clear who's right and who's wrong. When you allow yourself to be mazloom, and then if the zalim doesn't stop, then that makes that if you ever do become forced to turn to violence, then your right is clear. So it's very interesting that both of these concepts, so one is saying that no, we have the right, is from Islam, and the concept of allowing yourself to be mazloom and then taking your right is also there. But not this utter pacifism which they try to preach. They try to preach pacifism mutlaq, that in no way, in no shape, in no time that violence is allowed. You just have to sit there, be mazloom, lil abad, forever, until the zalim decides that he changed his mind, which is ridiculous. And Islam shows this, that it's for the izzat, because there's a taken to a far extreme, it's kind of weak. Maybe a little bit, you give him a chance to prove it one way or the other. But at taken to a far extreme, just like anything, if you take it too far this way and you take it too far that way, it becomes ugly. So let's say that the person did some teeny tiny zulm that maybe there's an explanation, and you go immediately, you escalate to the Samson option. That's ugly. He did some tiny zulm, maybe there's an explanation, we didn't try all the other things. This is ugly. At the same time, if you accept zulm and accept zulm and accept zulm and accept zulm and accept zulm until it just becomes adi, it just becomes normalized, that's also not correct. They had so this is the inalienable human right, even animal right. It's very interesting that the founders of the Constitution in America, they talked about this. They talked about this whole concept of state violence and the monopoly of the state on violence. And one of the sayings that came from their people, one of their inventors, it's attributed to Ben Franklin, maybe someone else said it, but it's attributed to him. He's like an inventor and a very intelligent person. He said, democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for dinner. And of course the wolves are going to be like, I think we should have sheep for dinner, sounds pretty good. Let's have a vote. Oh, it's 2-1. I guess it's sheep for dinner. He said, liberty is a well-armed sheep contesting the result. That you don't just accept the oppression, that they find some kind of weasel way to get oppression, make crooked rules, and it's like, okay, we got in by 51%, and then now we can do any zone that the 51% passes is okay, and it's now the law of the land. So this is an inalienable human right that human beings have. Now, the other thing which I've noticed with the Tawaghit is that they try to push either this utter acceptance of violence, or they even though they say they're against terrorism, they try to push that as the way to violence. What's the difference? One is this utter pacifism that becomes ugly, that people take your right and your land and you're this and you're that and you're that and the other, and then all you do is get killed and you get beaten. Then they say, well, okay, well, if you're not going to do that, then you do this disorganized, wild stuff. Solo jihads, which is basically terrorism. They like that because then it allows them to paint the whole zulm that they're doing as a fight against this individual. So we have what's an interesting thing from the Quran, where we have the story of Hazrat Musa, that there was one guy who was now doing this solo jihad, right? One of him and the Ali Fir'aun were fighting, one of the Bani Israel who was the Mazlum, and one of the Ali Fir'aun who was the Zalim. So they start fighting, and Musa goes to break up the fight. فَوَكَزَهُ مُوسَى وَقَضَى عَلَيْهِ. So Musa hit him, and by chance the guy fell and died. What's very interesting is Musa says after, قَالَ هَذَا مِنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ عَدُوٌ مُضِلٌّ مُبِينٌ. So whether his qasd, some of the mufassirin say it was the other person constantly starting fights, or that he's saying that killing somebody and doing doing jihad, as some of our hadiths say, that Musa's mistake here, the tarka awla that he did a jihad at a time of taqiyya, that he didn't have nasir. So even when we look at the story of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we need to really, sometimes when we look at this, the Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima Zahra, salamu alayha, Muhammad wa alayhi. When we see the story of Fadak and Saqifa and everything, and also we know the history of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that he was like a one-man army. He would go out on the battlefield, everybody else would run away, he would go and fight the whole thing and come back with the victory. Then some people might say that he had a couple of options at his table. When the Quraysh seized the power and they didn't want to listen and this, that, and the other, when is he could just, they like lived practically across the street. So like his house is on this side of the masjid and their house is on that side of the masjid. He could just show up there and just and be done with it. And who was going to fight him? They were scared of him. Why didn't he just use this method? Or he go and fight without Nasir or with very few Nasir? Because they say sometimes when they say the mob came to his house, 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, something like this, but not 10,000. And he had handled this number before in the battlefield multiple times. The whole army would run off and he would be left on the battle by himself, 4 or 5 people. So we have that so if you look at his skill at fighting, he could fight one guy, him fight 5 people. He fought Amr ibn Abd al-Wad, who was famous that that even an army couldn't beat him. They were horrified of that guy. So, and some of the people say, see, because this and because of that, and you Shias are making up. The whole story has to be wrong because Amir al-Mu'mineen, who's this brave, who can fight like this and fight like that. The idea that he would let 20, 30 people arrest him is ridiculous because he can fight a man who can fight 1,000 people. It's the sunnah that would be established. Then that would be the sunnah, that you don't have any nasir, some sort of zulm is going on, and you charge out and do a solo jihad. And then the rest of us would have that sunnah, and the rest of us aren't Amir al-Mu'mineen. So now you're duty bound to fight without any organization and any wider understanding from the people. The other part is, which is very interesting, is the people were at this level of dalala. They were at this level of being lost. Going over and doing a rogue solo jihad when no one understands the difference between right and wrong and haqq and batil. They don't know what happened. Meaning that it was important for the people to be aware. He was their imam, meaning they have to be aware of right and wrong. You don't just drag them from here to there. If you wanted to have that as a sunnah, then Prophet Muhammad could poison Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab in the first day. Right? If there was, we say there's la ikraha fi din. If the Prophet Muhammad didn't want to do that, if that was the sunnah, is you just establish Islam by however we establish. Prophet Muhammad could do the miracle of the Quran. Okay, you refused. I'm just going to take Abu Talib and the Bani Hashim. We're just going to kill all of these Abu Lahabs and Abu Jahals and everybody and insert Islam, but istibdad, with force on you. That's not our religion. That we just go there, poison Abu Jahl, he refuses, Abu Sufyan refuses, you give him poison, Abu whatever refuses you, give him poison, and then you just force the religion down the people's throat. No, the people need to come and accept the religion. The Prophet's job is to invite them to Islam. The Prophet's job is to ask them to do the right way. And that it's important to do it in the correct format, not just to do the jihad however. The Zalimeen like it to be that way, because then they can find the one or two people, paint the whole religion and say, look how violent these are. We've captured Hazrat Musa, and then destroy the whole Tawheed pull it out from its roots. Please give us salawat to Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So there's certain benefits to the fact that you protect yourself. And one of them is the prevention of fear from taking over the community. And remember, we're talking about jihad now in the organized format with the proper conditions, which we don't have time to go to, but an organized format and everything. So we already said that one of the conditions was obviously being attacked, and then we also made ishara to the fact that it's with the organization, with the proper imam. So even if we have this, that we'll read this ayat which is talking about jihad, and it's going to also tell us some of the benefits of it. Is it udhina, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, udhina lilladina yuqatilu bi'annahum zulimu. That permission to fight is given, or permission to resist, the word is mahdhuf, but we know that we're understanding, the permission to resist this zulm is given because they are being fought and because they are oppressed. So the first one is the other side initiates, and the person is doing the oppression. You can't do fighting in the cause of zulm. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. That Allah is powerful to give them power. And remember, it usually is happening that when you have this state, it's usually that there is at least an apparent showing of dha'af on the part of the believers. Because when they're strong, the Zalimeen just keep their head down. They feel that they have some sort of strength. So then they initiate and they begin to attack. الَّذِينَ أُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍّ أَلَّا أَنْ يَقُولُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَحُدِمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبَيْعُ وَالصَّلَوَاتُ وَمَسَاجِدْ يُذْكَرُ فِيهِ اسْمُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا. So, first thing we need to look at when the people try to say, oh guys, look at this religion, they have this concept of jihad. When you see the shurut, the conditions, why are you the one who is the mu'arada? Do you accept that you get kicked out of your house? They never ask, it's never flipped. Sometimes the Muslims start immediately, no, but the first thing we have to do is explain that jihad al-Akbar is the jihad against your nafs, and start, like we're running from it. Just ask the person, do you accept that you get kicked out of your house with ghayr haq? Do you accept that you're being killed? Meaning, if Islam is some sort of religion that doesn't go with human nature and everybody else does something different, is that what you do? When someone takes you from your house without right, do you accept? When someone kills your child without right, do you accept? When somebody does this zone to you or that zone to you, do you accept? If they say, no, I don't accept. Well, then Islam doesn't accept, Allah doesn't accept, God doesn't accept that this sort of oppression happened to the righteous people. That I'm living there peacefully going about my business and you're kicking me out of my house. Then what's very interesting is the next part, which is, I mentioned this before, is that it's in defense of the freedom of thought towards goodness. That if you didn't have this jihad, that hudimat would be destroyed, churches and synagogues and monasteries and mosques. So Allah is saying this as a concept. This isn't something that's tied to just that udhina lil mu'minina yuqatilu wa khayruhum laysa lahum udhn. Any human being, Allah is expressing this is the natural right. Please give us salawat. Ya Hussain. This is the right as a human being of self-defense. Why? Because if not, good ideas, so obviously the best idea is the worship of God. There's no idea more important than that. There's no idea better than that. But good ideas would get destroyed by force. I have a good idea. I think that we should, take care of the poor. And then some taghut to say, you know what, that's communism. Like, no, I'm just trying to take care of the poor. No, you can't say that. No, I'm not going to fight you. I'm just trying to say it. No, we're going to kill you because you said it. Meaning that you would destroy people's ability to think and turn them into animals. Because it would just become rule of the jungle. Any tyrant who can get his hands on an army now can make right and wrong. So it's needed that the righteous people be able to defend themselves, whether they're Jews or Christians or whoever, so that goodness itself won't be destroyed. The issue becomes, even they say this, that if you lose, in America, they don't have the Second Amendment here, but in America we have the Second Amendment. They say if you lose the Second Amendment, you lose the First Amendment too. Meaning if you can't defend the idea, then you lose the idea, which is why they inserted it. So jihad, in a way, is tied to two concepts, which is freedom of thought. And we know that if thought is allowed to be free, where does it lead? To tawheed. So if you don't have this, you end up without that other thing too. Fear is allowed to be spread in the community. People can come rob one from the other. And what's very interesting is when we were talking about this jihad, this personal protection, what's very interesting is in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli, was in Mecca. Yes, he didn't go and do offensive jihad. He didn't go and attack Abu Jahl or Abu Sufyan or Khayr. But he didn't prevent Abu Talib from doing the personal jihad to protect the religion. So Abu Talib, and that was their system that they had that tribal protection. If Islam had strict pacifism, then he would have stopped Abu Talib from that. And Allah backs it up. He says, Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa, meaning I didn't find you orphan and protected you. How? It was that they had fear that if they tried to do some sort of zulm to the Prophet, then they had the protection of Abu Talib and Hamza and all of these great warriors. So that it's not allowed to just let your life get thrown away. It's a protection from disorder, that the rules will get destroyed, the rights will get lost. A protection of people's lives and their property, because people get, like zalimeen, they get more aggressive. You let them take one thing, they decide that it's their right. You let them take another thing, they decide that it's their right. And it has to be with to keep the country from using its self-regulation mechanism. That each country, what it has is, no matter what system it is, it has some sort of self-regulation mechanism. That if something goes wrong, this is how we resolve that issue. As these countries start slipping and sliding into zulm, they start ignoring whatever the rules their own society has regarding life and liberty. Because every society has it. You can't exist without it. You have certain rules. They say as long as you stay within these rules, you're protected. And we're going to protect you as a society. Now, if a society is enforcing those rules, then there's no need to do, there's no call for doing jihad in this circumstance. This is that you just invite the people to the Islam with the best way and live a good life. And you don't even have to be doing jahr with your invitation. You can just be living a good example. Maybe some person open up a masjid. If people want to come, they come. We see with some of these groups how they broke this rule and they began to wage war against their own countries without doing the first part, making it clear what's right and wrong, without being attacked, and while their countries were still enforcing their rules. We have the case of Syria, right? Now, according to the other madahib, they had no other to do jihad. In their own religion, they didn't have an excuse. Why? They were allowed to practice their religion. They said, well, the guy's not that good. Yeah, but he's allowing you to practice your religion. He's allowing you to preach your religion. He's just saying, as long as you don't attack me as the sultan, you can do what you want. You don't have ijazah, you don't have permission to go over, and he's letting you do what you want as far as doing the tabligh. He's defending your rights. He's not allowing you to be hurt. And then you decide that, yeah, we're just going to go after the sultan because we just don't like him. And you saw the result that it had. Meaning it's not just a theory. In theory, yes, we see that imams didn't do this. When the people didn't know the difference between right and wrong, the imams stopped. Okay, we're going to call off the war. We're going to make it clear what right and wrong is. Sometimes we give the zalimeen enough room to hang themselves, and then we do something about it. So you have Amir al-Mu'mineen. When the people couldn't tell the difference between Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Khalifatul Ula, they couldn't know the differences. This is kind of like this. I don't know, one's good, the other one's good. I know the Prophet liked him a little better, but 6 eggs in one hand, half dozen in the other. If that's what your intelligence level is at, then doing a jihad and trying to force you into this higher level, you just don't understand it. You don't get it. They had to wait, and after the other people messed it up for years, then they said, okay, we want Amir al-Mu'mineen. He had now the helpers. He had now the supporters. The people, he knew their real level, but they were showing that they were at the level that they could understand, that they could want him as the Khalifa. Right? When it came to Imam Hussain, showed the same problem over again. Why didn't he start a war then? These people were lost. And if they started a war at that time, it would split the Muslim community into pieces. And then it would invite the enemies to return, because at that time, it was still early in the kingdom, and the Romans still hadn't been defeated, the Persians still hadn't been defeated. They had just barely got done with those Arab tribes that had become murtad, right? So because the level of the people wasn't at that level, they didn't have proper protection. They said, okay, let's let the truth become clear from the falsehood. Now, here's where another important stage comes in. That with the jihad, one of the things is very important is that jihad is important to prevent the loss of the truth. If you don't fight for the idea ever, then it can get wiped out. Another one is the prevention for humiliation. Okay? So we're going to look at a couple of things that ayat that are talking about this. That it's saying, the ayat, where is it? Please give us salawat. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. وقاتلوهم حتى لا يكون فتنة, and fight them until so that there won't be fitna. Another one, it says that a fitna is ashaddu min al-qatl. So when you have to prevent this chaos and disorder and humiliation. If the Muslim countries never do anything, then you allow for chaos and disorder to be spread in the world. And then the other one is the humiliation of not just the individual, the deen itself. When we have the example of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now he's talking and he says, you see what has happened, and the world is reversed, and what good is turned aside, and nothing remained of it but like leftover water in a vessel, thrown away. Life is like an unpleasant pasture. Do you not see that the truth is trampled and batil is embraced? So he's giving why didn't he just go and make some sort of deal or something like that? Because if you had some person who's like Yazid, and then the Imam shows willing bay'ah, the people can say that this is now the sunnah. The truth itself would be lost. If Yazid shows himself to be a king and it's clear that it's just by zulm, it's different. But if it's shown, because they were still on the process of that bay'ah was given voluntarily. And Yazid was like, I'm going to make you pretend that you believe in me. Or else. Do you see what I mean? What's the difference? One is he says, I'm going to kill you, and he says this openly, and this has become clear to everybody. He's saying, no, you have to pretend that you make bay'ah and agree to this person who is clearly not even religious in any way whatsoever. And the Imam is refusing that. Then you have the sentence from the Imam. He says that the faithful must be desirous to meet Allah in these circumstances. فَإِنِّي لَا أَرَى مَوْتَ إِلَّا شَهَادَةً وَلَا حَيَاةَ مَعَ ظَالِمِينَ إِلَّا بَرَامَةً. That I don't see death except as martyrdom, and I don't see life except as humiliation. So the Imam is like, no, you can't live into this sort of humiliation. Another time, he was saying that Allah has refused this for us, and the prophets and the believers, and the dignified such a proposal, that they make bay'ah to the zalim while he's doing jahr with zulm, clearly. And he's not saying you can just ignore it. They're saying, no, you have to come and join in this bay'ah with me. You have to join in this zulm. You have to show the people that, and you, the Imam who's supposed to be a guide, I'm going to force you to misguide the people. He said, no, this is refused. He said, by Allah, I will not give you the hand in humiliation, nor will I flee like slaves. This is where you have the famous sentence, Allah anna da'i ibn da'i qad rakazani bayna al-ithnatayn bayna sillati wa dhilla wa hayhat min ad-dhilla. Please salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That this evil person, who is the son of an evil person, has tried to make me choose between two things, the sword or humiliation. And we never accept humiliation. This needs to be what's in all of us. That we do not accept any sort of humiliation. We do not accept that the truth be lost. Now we come to the time of Imam Hussain, where this is getting towards the end of the war, and he's lost so many of his companions. Companion after companion has been lost. And his brother Abbas had, from the beginning, he kept asking the Imam, can I go and fight? The Imam would say, no, you're the standard bearer. He would be like, yes, let me go and do jihad. He was like, no, we have to let the other people do jihad. He kept asking, and finally it got to the end, and there was no one hardly left. And so Abbas now comes to the Imam and says, again, do you permit me to go and fight? And Imam says, no, I can't give you permission to go and fight. He says, why? He said, because if you're the flag holder, and if you die, then the army is going to lose some courage. There's no army at this time. So Abbas doesn't say anything, and the situation is getting worse. And finally Abbas comes to him, and he didn't want to say the same thing because he already got turned down so many times. And so he just says, my armor is getting a little heavy for me, meaning asking for permission to fight. And Imam tries to be like, well, you're the flag holder. He said, the army will lose faith if you go and fight. Abbas says, my Imam, there's no army. It's just us. And they're thirsty, and the Imam doesn't want to give it permission. He says, okay, I'll give you permission to fight, but I have to ask you for one favor. He says, what's your favor? Can you please, before you go and fight, can you bring back some water for my children? My children are thirsty. They haven't had water in days. So Abbas says, I swear to Allah that I'm going to try to bring them back some water, then I'll go on a fight. And he goes and he meets the children, and he says, I'm going to bring you back some water. And he gets one of the water skins, he goes to his horse, and he rides off. And the enemies say, we were ordered to not let one drop of water reach the camp of Imam Hussain. If you guys let him reach the camp of Imam Hussain, the water reach the camp of Imam Hussain, you're all going to be punished. So they send out 4,000 soldiers to fight against Hazrat Abbas. Abbas rides into them like a lion. They start trying to fight him and trying to do this and do that, but the ferocity of the attack, he smashes through 5,000 soldiers. He rides into the palm trees and he jumps his horse into the water. Now, this is the end of the day. They've been sitting out there baking, and Abbas is thirsty. And just on instinct, he starts to pick the water up to put it into his mouth. And then he remembers the children of Imam Hussain, and he remembers his Imam. And he starts crying. He says, how can I drink water when the Imam's children are thirsty? So he fills his water skin and he turns his horse and he starts riding his horse back to the camp. But while he was in the water, they had a chance, and their commanders are like, no, he really can't get him back. If he takes that water back, we're all going to be punished. We've broken the command of our leader. So they stand out there and they attack the Abbas again. And now he's fighting them with the same type of ferocity. But the thing is, now he's holding the water and the flag and trying to defend himself. And as he's fighting, they realize they can't come from the front, so they start to try to come from the back and from the sides and this direction and that direction, and he's fighting ferociously like a lion. Subhanallah. Everything that you imagined. He's fighting like Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's fighting like the Prophet. He's fighting with everything he has. He's fighting like Jafar Tayyar. And they cut off one of his hands. He takes the flag in the other hand, and he continues his battle, and he continues to strive, and he continues to fight until they cut off his other hand. And he takes the flag with what's left of his arms, and he says, no, I'm continuing back. I'm going to make it. He keeps fighting. But as he's going, they shoot the bag of water. And Abbas remembers his promise, and so now with no arms, he tries to turn back to get the water again. But now he can't defend himself. And you know how people are. Cowards, they become aggressive if you're weak. So they attack with everything they have, and they hit him, and they shoot him, and they throw rocks at him until finally something hits him in his eyes and he can no longer see. Then someone rides up behind him and hits him and knocks him off of the horse. He crashes to the ground and he can't protect himself because he doesn't have hands, and gets dragged by the horse, and they go more crazy. Then he says, Salaam alayka ya Aba Abdullah. He knows he can't make it back with the water. His heart's broken. His Imam Hussein's children will go hungry and thirsty. Imam Hussain runs out and leaves the tents and runs to go and get him. But you can't even recognize him because he's completely cut to pieces. His head's bashed in, his arms are cut off, he's shot with arrows. You don't know where to start, where to finish. Imam says, I'll try to take you back to the camp. He says, don't take me back to the camp. I'll be ashamed because I didn't bring them up. The Imam says, and he says, now my back is broken. I lost my brother.